Welcome to the Fathering Strong podcast, where we connect, engage, and empower fathers to be the best dads they can be for their families and communities. And now, your hosts are Bruce Stapleton and Pastor Eli Williams.
Well, hello and welcome to this week's Fathering Strong podcast. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Bruce Stapleton, father and grandfather, and marketing guru that does all the social media posts for Fathering Strong.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Eli Williams. I'm a husband, a father, a grandfather. I'm an author. I'm a pastor at New Hope Church in Springfield, Ohio, and president of Urban Light Ministries, which is the nonprofit organization that powers Fathering Strong. We're glad you're with us today. Welcome.
Welcome. Well, last week, Eli, we talked about, we're still on the POPS program here in regards to what we're looking at. We talked about the last P in POPS as provider. The main takeaway was, fathers more than just financial resources. We talked about other ways that they could be providers for their family. So this week we're going to finalize on the S, or stabilizers. So we're going to discuss, how present, mature, and responsible father is a stabilizing force in a child's life.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit nervous, but not really, because I'm not politically correct. I'm just not wired to be timid about saying what I believe. And what I believe is that the good old days were better. What I mean by that is you simply cannot deny the fact that children were better off being raised in a home with a mother and a father who are married to each other and who are committed to raising their children together in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Call me old-fashioned. I'm sorry, but the facts bear this out. Look at any of the research, and you'll see that there are many benefits to children growing up in a home like that. Those homes are more stable. They're able to provide children with a secure environment. When two parents are sharing responsibilities, the routines, the responsibility for the finances, it just makes for a less stress-filled home. I mean, there's predictability, there's consistency, and the kinds of things that make for stability, which a child really needs for their emotional well-being. When there are clear roles and responsibilities, when the mother knows what her job in the family is, father knows what his job in the family is, and they work together in sharing those responsibilities, that really provides a sense of order for the children. I mean, there is a sense of predictability. They know what to expect. Children benefit from that. So I'm really not ashamed to say it. I think that was a better way than, unfortunately, what we have so much of today. When two parents are working together on their household chores and duties around the house and yard, there's just less stress on each of them, and that gives them both more time to devote to the children. When there are strong parental bonds between the mother and the father, it provides a foundation for the family. I mean, I grew up in a home like that, and I am very, very grateful for it. I mean, even when I was younger, when I was a teenager, even a preteen, I could see the difference between the way my home was and how some of my friends' homes were. And they weren't good. I mean, it was like night and day. I knew I had a dad who was there who loved me. I knew I had a mom, who loved me, and they took care of me, and they never fought. I mean, if they fought, they went behind closed doors when we were all gone to bed, and they worked it out. And we never saw them fighting. And I'll be, well, you should let your kids see you having a disagreement. Well, maybe, as long as that disagreement is handled in a mature and responsible way. But my parents just took it behind closed doors. We never saw it. What we saw was a united front, a mom and a dad who were always trying to do the right thing by their children. I benefited from that, and I can't help but believe that that's a better way to raise children. And when it comes to financial security, I mean, my dad was the only breadwinner, and that meant he had to work hard. He had a full-time job that paid decent and with benefits, but then he would work part-time jobs, sometimes 2 part-time jobs. He did whatever he had to do to make sure that we were taken care of, Bruce, but, we were never rich. But as children, we didn't really know that we were not rich. In other words, we didn't know that we were poor, is a better way to put it, because we always had shoes on our feet. We never lived in a rented house. We were never on welfare. We were taken care of. For some families, that takes, the mother and the father working, whatever it takes. But there is more financial security generally when you've got a mother and a father working together to provide for their children. Good education, health care, and extracurriculars, and all the things that a family needs to provide a secure environment for their children that's stable. Okay, so there, now I said it. Throw stones if you'd like. I guess I'm just old-fashioned, but I believe that the research bears out what I'm saying, that children are better off in a home like that.
Well, what we found out from the different dads we talked to, I think that's true. I knew I grew up in the same type of family that you did, and without that stability, you have all those other circumstances that come up that just get in the way of being a good father or a good mother. And having a father as the sole provider also gives your mom the opportunity to spend time with the children and do different things. So it's definitely a better relationship growing up. But we know from talking to fathers and dealing with individual communities on Fathering Strong, that's not the case for everybody. And
That's right.
we know that people struggle with that and are trying to find ways to improve the stability. But it's hard. I know, as you talked about it, not having a father or not having them around causes more instability, and for kids, that requires more stress.
Yeah, unfortunately. And it's true that too many families today are not like that. Like what I described and what you described, Bruce. According to the Fragile Families and Child Well-Being Study, and they produced a fact sheet that says that only 35% of unmarried couples are still living together 5 years after the birth of their child, and less than half of the 35 are married. Wow. Think about that for a minute. To put it another way, out of 100 unmarried couples who have a baby in a year, 5 years later, only 35 of those couples are still living together. Only 17 or fewer of the 100 couples that got married, only 17 or fewer. Let me get it right. Only 17 or fewer of the 100 couples got married. Okay, so they started out January the 1st, 100 couples. Only 35 of that 100 were still together after 5 years. And 17 or fewer of those got married to each other. So you multiply that by thousands and thousands of times and think of all the children who have had to endure the trauma of the breakup of their parents over that period of time. Here's another one. Couples that are cohabiting at birth are more likely to be together than couples in visiting unions. Now, that's just a fancy way of what we used to call shacking up, when you're not married, but you live together as though you're married. that's a better situation than people having babies just on a whim, on a one-night stand. So, I mean, even among the less than ideal married couple raising children together, cohabiting couples having children is better than these one-night stands, or these short trysts are, because they produce children too, and those children are destined to be, unfortunately, at a disadvantage. And here's another one. Nearly 40% of all unmarried mothers experience at least one new partnership, and about 14% have a child with a new partner, adding to the potential instability and complexity of these families. Now, a little bit later on, we're going to talk about the impact of that. How, let's take unmarried mothers, for example, having children by different men, and these children experiencing the breakup every time these men leave for whatever reason. That has a negative impact on the child, and we'll talk some about that a little bit later on. So I know that's a lot, and I don't like throwing statistics out. It's better if they can be broken down into everyday talk. But the fact is, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, and what you said earlier, we talked about this last week too, that one of the things that drives the instability is the fact that they don't have grandparents or other family members around. If they're just relying on the mom and the dad, and the mom continually changes who her partner is, there's no one else there to provide stability.
Yeah. It's sad for the children. It causes a lot of pain, a lot of trauma for those children. And people have said for years, don't worry about the kids. Children are resilient. They get over it. Well, that's not really true, because that's not taking into account the emotional turmoil that children go through. We know now about the long-lasting effects of trauma that perhaps we didn't have a good handle on before. But children of separation and divorce are traumatized. We're going to take a break, and when we get back, we're going to talk some about the ways in which separation and divorce are hard on kids. Don't go away. We'll be back with more of the Fathering Strong podcast after this brief timeout.
We dads and father figures need each other. We need a safe, non-judgmental place to share our stories, challenges, heartaches, and joys. Fathering Strong is just such a place. A new online community of connected, engaged, and empowered fathers. Learn more at www.fatheringstrong.com.
Welcome back to the Fathering Strong podcast. We're discussing how fathers can be stabilizers with their children and their families today. But before we dig into that much more, let's consider the whole ravages of instability. The breakup of a child's family has got to be one of those destabilizers for the kids and cause them stress. You were getting into that earlier, Eli, in regards to some of the ways that that happens and what some of the causes are. And I know from talking to some of the dads and actually even some of the children of those fathers, it just provides, they feel sad and they feel lost. They don't really have any stability, and not having other family members around, I believe, is one of those key indicators as well. And some of that drives that anger and resentment we talked about during the order keeper process, that they don't really have a good role model, and they just are finding ways to get that stability. And they've got to feel resentful when both of those parents aren't together, or they're divorced, or they're fighting all the time. And I know that provides confusion and insecurity for them because they don't really have a stable environment. And so the whole piece on stability has got to be key to the overall success of a strong family.
Yeah, and children have a tendency to internalize things. When mom and dad breaks up, a child has a tendency to think, well, I must have done something wrong, or there's something wrong with me. I'm at fault here for that happening. That just leads to more confusion in the child's mind about who they are, and it causes them to feel insecure about their place in the family. They become angry at their children, at their parents rather. They're blaming their parents for the situation, and that anger doesn't go away easily. That anger can actually then begin to show up in the child's behavior. Other things such as anxiety and fear. I mean, of course, a child may feel anxious, may be panicked, maybe be worrying about their own future when their whole world is falling apart. Think about it. I mean, their whole world is mom and dad and their family. And when there's a breakup there, that child's world just crumbled. And so naturally, there's going to be anxiety and there's going to be fear about their future, how they're going to live, how they're going to be financially supported, whether mom and dad still love them. And then, as I said earlier, that tendency sometimes for the child to feel that they're the problem, that they're the reason. So they've got that guilt and that self-blame. Another thing that is a real problem for children when there is a divorce, that typically creates a financial stress on that parent, whichever it is, the mother or the father who is a custodial parent, the parent that the children live with. There is a financial cost to going from two incomes to two, or the other expenses involved with trying to maintain the household. And this can mean that the family has to move. They have to leave from where they live if they can no longer afford it. Excuse me. They have to move. And then sometimes it means that child is uprooted from their school, from their friends. So that just adds to the trauma that the child is experiencing. And when there are frequent moves like that, and that child is moved from place to place, over and over again, this child is facing changing schools and losing friends. That is hard on a child. So just to dismiss it and say, well, the kids will get over it, they're resilient, is to overlook the fact that these children are real people who have real feelings, and they have real concerns. So again, those are some of the ways in which the breakup of a family is very, very hard on children, and it ought to be avoided whenever it can be.
Yeah, and it really depends on the child too, because like you said, I mean, sometimes they blame themselves for the divorce, that they feel like it's their issue and they caused it, and that emotional damage is going to be dependent upon how old they are and what their different personality type is. And like you said, I mean, those frequent moves and those instabilities really cause major trauma, and all of those different pieces, I think, add to the overall puzzle. As you get more and more involved with different people and you keep moving and things like that, that just continue to, those little pieces, you heard the slogan, the straw that broke the camel's back. I mean, none of those may seem big at the time, but as those grow and build up, I think they're going to have a major impact on the child. So, yeah. So another factor we're going to look at in regards to, custodial parents is, moving on to other romantic relationships. You talked about, getting involved with different people and the frequency of that and what the impact is going to be. And we'll talk about that after the next break. So we'll be right back.
Do you know a new father who could benefit from a basic introduction to healthy fathering principles? POPS 101, a free online course consisting of 4 one-hour sessions in English or Spanish, could be perfect for him. POPS 101 lays out practical steps toward becoming the protector, order keeper, provider, and stabilizer his child needs. Learn more at urbanlight.org.
This is Fathering Strong. I'm Eli Williams, Bruce Stapleton on the other end here, and we're talking about fathers as stabilizers. After a divorce, many unmarried mothers, quite naturally, enter into new romantic relationships. I mean, there's a need there, and she will move on, and she's got another guy. Nearly 40% of all unmarried mothers experience at least one new partnership, and about 14% of them have a child with that new partner. So now we've got a child who is, let's say for an example, the most common case is he's under the custody of the mother, and dad's gone, and now there's another guy. And now mom has a child with this guy. So now he's got a half brother. She, perhaps, has a half brother or sister. So that adds to the whole complexity. The child is still hurting. And now there has been another child entered into the picture. So that potentially adds more instability to the situation. And then there's the case where the mom continues that pattern where she breaks up with that boyfriend or husband, whatever the case, and now her child goes through that process of mourning, of grieving the loss of yet another relationship. And it is seriously traumatizing to that child. Every time he forms a bond with a man, and that man becomes his father figure, and then when there's a breakup and he leaves, that's like experiencing death. It's the death of a relationship. First the biological father, and now another man. And if this continues, and the mom continues to have these serial relationships, that multiplies the trauma against that child or those children that are there. Now that's the very definition of instability. And any wonder why children in a situation like that can really have emotional problems, because they're struggling. They're forming attachments, and then those attachments are broken. And then it happens again, and then it happens again. It leads to anxiety and, of course, feelings of insecurity. And it's confusing for a child. They'll have difficulty understanding, why there are so many people coming in and out of their lives. That's enough to confuse anybody. And it can cause a child to begin to wonder, well, is there something wrong with me that these men don't stay here? So it's just not a good situation for children. And this is why we're harping on the fact that fathers need to be the stabilizers whenever it's possible, to hang in there as much as possible through thick and thin, to try to work it out and be that stabilizing force in a child's life.
And as you talked about earlier, the kids are going to get jealous on all these new pieces that come in, whether it's jealous against the new father who comes in or the new brother or sister that they have. I mean, they're always going to be looking for attention, like you said. And if they don't get that stabilization from the father, and they don't have it in any other person in their family, maybe it could be an older brother or a grandfather or an uncle, or but they're going to they're looking for that stability somewhere. And as you mentioned, as all those pieces become into play, it just continues to provide them confusion, and in some cases, I think just loss, feeling like they don't belong and they're not really sure where they fit in. And that's when they go out and start doing things they probably shouldn't be doing, especially as teenagers. So I think those losses really have a key impact into the stability of, a child's emotion as they grow up.
Yeah, I mean, kids are only human, as I said before. And if you keep getting hurt over and over again, the chances are you're going to develop a hard shell around your heart. I mean, you just don't want to form a relationship with yet another man who comes around. I have seen this happen. I used to be in the schools a lot when we were doing our children's ministry for those 25 years. There would be children in our program who would sit in a corner. I mean, they would sit on the sidelines and not even be engaged in the activities, the games. The other kids are having fun, and they're sitting all by themselves. And you try to get them engaged, and it's like they've got some barrier around themselves where they don't want to let anybody in. And we come to find out that in a lot of cases, these kids have been traumatized. They've been hurt, and by the loss of a relationship or abuse or something like that. And in order to protect themselves, they won't let anybody in. They don't want friends because they're afraid that they're just going to get hurt again. And so I've seen that a lot, and I'm sure any school teachers who are listening will attest to this, that when there's instability in the home and there has been trauma, it has a very, very negative effect on children. Now, the good news is, yes, there is some good news in all this. And the good news is that when men are empowered, when they are encouraged, when they are enabled to be engaged in the lives of their children over the long haul, they bring stability to their families. And they're able to prevent all the trauma we just got through talking about. I don't mean necessarily, a perfect situation, a perfect world, but all of this over-the-top trauma that some children have to endure can be prevented by a father who is committed, who is there, even if he doesn't live in the same home, when he is provided a gateway for full access to those children. Just his being there makes a big, big difference. And I would say that after a divorce, when the biological father continues to be engaged in the life of his children, even if the mom goes and gets another husband, that father coming around and being there and picking that child up and spending time with that child will help provide stability for that child, even though the mother is changing partners. Even when the mother changes partners frequently in a serial fashion, when the father is the constant factor, he's always there. When a child knows he can always count on his dad to be there, that adds stability to that child's life. So any fathers out there who are listening, I want you to take this to heart, that it's important that you stick in there, that you hang in there, that you do all you can to be a part of your child's life, no matter what's going on with the mother. If you can't get custody yourself or get shared custody or whatever, just make sure that you are there for your children, because you provide perhaps the only stability that child has in his life. And when you do that, then your child is going to be emotionally healthier. They're going to have better emotional well-being. They're going to be able to manage their emotions. They're going to have higher self-esteem. They're going to have lower levels of anxiety and depression. Why? Because you are there, providing a stabilizing force in their lives. They'll have better social skills because of it. They won't be the kids sitting in the corner or on the sidelines, because they have this sense of being somebody, knowing that they're loved, that dad is always there for them. Your consistent involvement in your child's life helps that child to be able to grow up and have healthy relationships with their peers and even later on in life. The studies suggest that your mere consistent presence in your child's life helps your child be better at school, better academic performance. Just your being there and involved in your child's life. We can't overstate this. Dads, you can be the stabilizer that makes all the difference in your child's life. Be there.
And as we wrap up this POP series on, talking about stabilizers, hopefully, if you've listened to some of the other podcasts we've done earlier, you can see the consistency and the types of things that we all need to do as fathers. We need to be the positive role models and, be there, as Eli just said, and that provides that sense of security and stability. And, by reducing those variables in your child's life that causes instability really creates a stronger bond. And, we always talk about in Fathering Strong how we want to build stronger families and stronger communities. And I think this is definitely one way of doing that. So it's putting those pieces together in POPs, being the protector, the order keeper, the provider. And then most importantly, all of that put together makes you a great stabilizer.
Yes, and we really don't have the time to be comprehensive in all of this that we're sharing, but these are some of the ways in which fathers bring stability. And then that not only makes for a stronger family, it also makes a difference in the community. When there are enough fathers who are engaged with their kids in a neighborhood, in a community, it makes for a more stable neighborhood. That's our job. That's our job, to be there, to be a stabilizing force, not only for our own families, but also in our communities, being the protectors, the order keepers, the providers, and the stabilizers beyond our own families that are actually making our community a better place.
Well, thanks for joining us today. That wraps up today's episode of this podcast. But there's much more out there in regards to taking a look at Fathering Strong and some of the other blog posts. And you can take a look if you're looking for more information on this week's blog post at fatheringstrong.com or at urbanlight.org.
We appreciate you joining us today on the Fathering Strong podcast. We invite you to tell a friend about Fathering Strong, that perhaps they'll check it in and they'll get some interesting, important nuggets for themselves. We want you to know that there is a myriad of other resources available to you on fatheringstrong.com, devotionals, videos, fatherhood courses, and much more. So check it out, fatheringstrong.com. We think you'll find plenty there to maintain your interest, and it's all designed to help you to be the best dad you can be.
Yeah, thanks, Eli. And as we all look forward to these podcasts, I know you just love listening to me talk, but next week, fortunately enough, we'll have a new guest, James McDonald. So we're looking forward to bringing him onto the podcast. He's our fatherhood champion and president and CEO of All Well Behavioral Health Services in Ohio. And we're going to discuss what mental health means and how that fits into how you can become a better father and some of the issues related to that. So join Eli and James McDonald next week on our Fathering Strong podcast.
Some final words. The metaphor for God in the Bible, one of the metaphors for God is he's a rock. A rock. We see that a lot in the Hebrew Bible. That metaphor, the rock, represents God as a source of stability, a source of strength, and a source of protection, a rock. Psalm 18:2 says, "The Lord is my rock and my safe place, the one who takes me out of trouble. My God is my rock in whom I am safe. He is my safe covering, my saving strength, and my strong power." And we dads have the responsibility and the privilege of being as stable as a rock for our families, for our children. They ought to be able to say of us that we are their safe place. May the Lord bless you as you give your child what no one else on earth can, and that is your fully developed father love. That's Fathering Strong.
The Fathering Strong podcast is a production of Urban Light Ministries with technical assistance from the Momentum Group, and Harold Rayford provides the theme music. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you again next week.
Fathering Strong is powered by Urban Light Ministries, a not-for-profit organization serving the needs of families and children for nearly 30 years. Your support helps us continue turning the hearts of fathers to their children while meeting some of the immediate critical needs of struggling families with small children. Contributions of all sizes are welcomed at www.urbanlight.org.